So today we're going to talk about using paste paint to decorate papers. So paste paint is a traditional bookbinding craft, and you can make all sorts of raised looking patterns and designs through this translucent stuff called paste paint. Right now, these two examples I'm showing you are actually still kind of wet, but once they dry up, all that paste will soak into the paper. So paste, let's start with that, is like, this is a natural paste. It's actually cornstarch and water. That's what's in this. And you have to cook it. So you take cornstarch and you add it to regular water. You boil a whole bunch of other water. Stir the two together, like really, really fast with an electric mixer. And then you let it cool. Once it cools, it creates a kind of glue that's going to soak into the paper. To make it paste paint and not just paste, all you need to do is add a tiny bit of paint. So this is just like regular old tempera paint. It's nothing fancy. And you just need like the amount of a dime for that much of the paste itself. So I have a palette knife here, and I'm going to stir it up. It's got a little tiny bit of purple on it, so it's going to make my yellow not such a primary yellow. It's going to make it a little gold, because purple and yellow are complements on that. They're direct opposites. They're complementary colors. So that's going to neutralize the yellow. It's going to make it a little darker, which I like. So there's how you prep your paste paint. So you just choose your colors. You can stir them together. And there you go. So I've got some of that. I've got some red violet, and some regular violet ready to go. Before you can do anything with that, though, for it to properly work, you need to saturate your paper first. So I'm going to stick my paper into this red thing that's just on the edge of your screen. It's filled with a little water. I'm going to just put it in there for just a second or two, and then I'm going to let all the excess drip off. And then I'll put that there for me to work with. So it's stuck to the table pretty good right now. I'm going to leave it where it is, and I'm going to just wet this other paper so that it's ready for me when I am ready for it. So I'm letting the water soak up into the paper. So just let it sit for a minute. Do this first and then mix up your paints. While we're waiting for that to soak in, I'll show you a couple tools. These are, manufactured. They're store-bought, and they all have little ridges on them. To create these textures and patterns, what you're going to do is you're going to remove paint with them. So you're putting the paste paint down, and then you're using these tools to actually physically remove some of that paste paint. It'll come off on the edge, it'll be messy, but that's what's going to make it happen. So you're actually working reductively. You're taking away paint to show the lighter lines. So you can use these to do that. A homemade way to do this, if you want to do this cheap, you can totally do this at home. These are old coffee gift cards. I like coffee. And there are different shapes cut out. Those will give you different effects. So these are kind of staggered, big and small. These are pointy. These are just very blocky. These are curved. You get the idea. You can make those. Another thing to use, wide tooth combs, really awesome for little stripes. These guys will do tiny stripes. And anything circular, these, if you use a straw and you just push this way, it'll take off that tiny little circle. Or you can use something nice and big, like a jar lid. That's going to take a nice big circle out. Alright, so our paper should be ready. Feeling good and saturated, so let's start. We're going to use, I'll show you kind of how I did those two designs before. So I'll start with this one. I'm going to use a palette knife, and I'm going to just spread around, oops, got a little yellow on that. Clean that off. Spread the paste around. So I'm doing it kind of in uneven way, and I'm letting there be thick areas and thin areas, because that is part of the fun. I'm going to introduce the violet. I like to just blob them in spots and then I spread them out. So it's just back and forth. I'm not pressing hard or anything, just moving the stuff around. And you want to avoid really big globs. Really big globs won't fully soak into the paper. They'll just leave a residue. So you don't really want that. That's not ideal, because it will crack afterwards. It'll make kind of a mess, and it won't be like paste it won't be just marbled paper, basically. It'll be paper with stuff raised on it. Our goal is for all this to soak right into the fibers of the paper. All right, so I'm ready. I've got this, and you could totally just say, hey, I like this. I'm gonna leave it just like it is. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how you can use a circular object to create those circles in that first example. So I'm gonna use this side, and I'm gonna rub it into the paper. If I don't move it side to side, it'll make a skinny little circle. But if I do the same thing and I kind of let it shift a little, it's gonna move away that extra paste. So I'm shifting a little to make kind of this little funky ring design, and I'm overlapping them to make like little, kind of like the Olympics rings overlap and intertwine. And I'm going right off the edge, so I'm getting the full design so it doesn't look like it's avoided. I'm even going around the sides to the bottoms, get a couple extras. So pretty quick and easy, lots of fun. It's basically like finger painting. So there's the one. And now, very important, the thing that you have to remember is you always need to reset in between papers. Don't leave a whole mess there, because that's going to end up on your next paper. It's going to soak right into the back side of it. So always clean in between. You should reset all of your materials every single time. So my next paper, nice and good, ready to go. So I'm going to use the red and the gold, similar to what we had before, except instead of the palette knife, I'm going to use a brush to apply it. So I'm going to start with a whole base coat of this like yellow gold. I'm going to spread it around, and unlike the palette knife, I'm going to try to make this a little bit more even so you don't see all my brush strokes. So I'm letting the brush kind of make a nice, clean, even layer. So I'm not having any big glops, and there's no real bare areas either. So there's kind of an even tone, more or less. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so I like the level of yellow that we've got right now. A little bit more from the bottom. All right, so now I'm going to add some red to the top, and I'm just going to go right from the top edge and brush downward, kind of uneven like, so it's almost like dripping. Add a little more at the top. And you can see it's wet, so it's kind of blending together and making a little bit of an orange color, because red plus yellow is orange. And now let's see what some of these texture tools can do. Again, you could just leave this just like this if you wanted. It's a pretty piece of paper. It would make a great sketchbook cover, but we're going to take it one step further. So I'm going to start with this big one. This has really big, evenly spaced lines, and I'm going to try to make it as straight as I can. So I'm going nice and slow. And then I'm actually going to line this one up on the inside of that empty space and try to make it so that there's not like a skinny one on the end. I'm going to try to keep it all the same size. And again, you can see the paste being removed. If you have a cloth near you, you can you can always remove that if it gets too messy. All right, so now I've got these nice even vertical stripes. I'm going to go in, I'm going to use this little tiny guy. I'm going to put some kind of wiggle shapes on the bottom. So I'm going to show you, you can kind of, there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to make kind of like a swirl, but I'm just pivoting and moving a little bit as I go. So it's making kind of like a funky wave thing, which is pretty cool. I missed the end here, so I'm going to try to line it back up. There we go. Get right up to the edge. All right, so got that. Now, I don't really like how empty this is, so I'm just going to take my brush and go back, make a little edge there, and I'll leave a little gap right at the top. All right, and you can keep layering this. You could brush up the bottom. You could do some finger swirls. You can add some little tiny circles. That might look cool. Like a straw can make these little tiny texture circles. It's all about texture and pattern, repetition and rhythm, and make some good colors. So all in all, you're going to make a mess. you're going to experiment, you're going to have fun, and then don't forget, you're going to clean up. It's the last thing, but not any less important. All right, enjoy.